Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening. It's Roger Gilbert here reporting for Milling and Grain magazine along with International Aquafeed. I'm at the World Nutrition Forum here in Cancun, Mexico for a couple of days, and it's just coming to the end of the first day of conferences. We're very fortunate to have at this conference some 800 delegates globally, and I'm pleased to say the focus this morning has been on sustainability. And I'm very pleased to say I'm in the company of David Nickell, and David is the VP of Sustainability and Business Development at dsm-firmenich as of today. David, tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Roger, and pleasure to be here. Yeah, so my role in the company, as he's described, Head of Sustainability and Business Development for the group. I spend a lot of time looking into how to make animal protein more sustainable, working with value chain partners, so from the farming community, feed milling, through to the downstream value chain. As you know, there's a tremendous interest and demand for more sustainable protein, animal protein, and particularly understanding exactly what is the footprint of animal production. We spend a lot of time developing the Sustell business, and that business is an intelligent sustainability platform which allows the value chain to understand what is the detailed footprint of animal production across multiple species. Once you know that, then you know how to act and make improvements. So we spend a lot of time working in that area. It's all about data, getting on top of data.
So it's not a quick fix. How long have you been working on it?
Well, Sustell has been, we've been working on that for about 5 or 6 years now. It's a development which has been taking place also as methodologies, calculation methodologies, standards and guidelines for environmental footprint measurement have been evolving. So, of course, it doesn't happen overnight. But we've been developing the system very much in tune with the users, with customers, listening to the customers, working with industry partners to develop a system which is has a fantastic user experience. It's helping the industry decomplexify a very complex topic, and also being able to scale this. So you can imagine understanding what's going on in multiple farms feeding into a value chain and getting into that level of detail. And that's what's needed. It's about getting down to the individual farm's data. It's about primary data. No longer can you rely on just high-level industry secondary data as such. It's about the individual, what the individual's doing, and that's the getting down into the detail. So Sustell is set up to do that.
Yeah. I can see that happening on the farm with what's generated on the farm, but what about all the raw materials being brought in terms of the feed, etc.?
Yeah, it's a very important point. So, you know, the feed component, the nutritional part of growing animal protein is highly influential. It is those feed ingredients that go into the feed that have the biggest influence, you could say, on the whole final footprint of animal protein. So you need to look at what's in the recipe, how those feed ingredients were produced themselves, how they were grown. You know, what were the inputs going into that crop. How were they irrigated, you know, all these sorts of things, land use, what have you. And all that data, of course, needs to be collected. So each crop itself has a life cycle analysis behind it. And the what's called life cycle inventory, LCI data, is typically captured in internationally recognized databases, like the GFLI database for feed ingredients, as one example. Sustell is hooked up into these databases so that once you enter a recipe into Sustell, it will pull that data around those different feed ingredients to compose then the footprint of that feed. Right, and the footprint of the feed, of course, is just one element going as an input into the farming system. You then need to capture the data of the animal production process, farming process, so FCR, yield, etc., as well as all the way through to, say, the management of manure and how you deal with those outputs as well from the farm.
I can see how the farmer would establish his footprint, but can he manage his footprint? Can he change it up and down, as it were?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of Sustell. We designed it in a way that it's really important. People want to know exactly where they are today. So first and foremost, what am I doing? What is my baseline? And that's what you do first and foremost, establish that baseline. Sustell allows you to understand exactly how that baseline is composed, okay? And also illustrates where there's room for improvement. The platform allows you to run multiple what we call what-if scenarios. So what if I change this? What if I change that? What will be the impact on the environmental footprint? And that's a full life cycle analysis. So that's in 19 dimensions of footprinting. So you get to really explore how to apply technologies, whether it's in the feed part of the business, changing the feed formulation, for example, whether it's through to changes in husbandry practice, changes in terms of animal performance or reduction in mortality, for example, all the way through to how you're managing and handling your manure, for example. So you can really understand and play multiple scenarios, and that's really important because it then gives you an indication of where to invest and where not to invest. And you can run those models before you spend any money on that investment, right? So that's the important thing.
Does it stop at the farmer, or are you providing information further down the chain, say to retailers or supermarkets or something along those lines?
Well, the whole thing is the value chain. You've got to think horizontally, okay? So everybody is linked in this process of understanding the environmental footprint of animal protein. If you start down at the downstream part of the chain and you look at, say, the retail part of the business, many retailers these days are setting or signed up to science-based targets, and they have committed to reductions in, for example, their carbon footprint, say by 2030, 25-30% reduction by 2025, for example. To do that, of course, they need to be looking up at the farm, because 90% of their scope 3 emissions, that's the bulk of your emissions, are sitting up at the farm level. This information is very important for the downstream chain, for them to be able to understand and manage the reductions that they've committed to.
And this is your first nutritional forum where you're able to explain this to attendees?
Well, we've had we launched Sustell now about over 2 years ago, I'd say, to the markets, and had numerous opportunities across the different markets to introduce Sustell. We're constantly improving the platform. The latest release came out in February, March this year. Again, further improving the user experience, adding more modularity and functionality to the platform. So we maintain and continue to improve and update, making sure that we're constantly on top of the latest calculation methodologies, but again also listening to the users, improving the experience for them, and making sure that most importantly that is a scalable platform, and that's what's needed these days.
And is there some activity or some role feed manufacturers could play in this process?
Yeah, feed manufacturers play a pivotal role. They need to, obviously, the feed ingredients, as I explained earlier, and the feed composition itself plays an enormous role in the footprint of animal production. But it's not just the components of the feed formulation itself, the bag of feed, it's how the animal consumes or utilizes that feed, right? So it's all very well constructing a feed formulation with a low footprint, but if that somehow reduces or shall we say has a negative effect on the conversion of that feed into animal protein, then that doesn't really help the farming community, because you then end up with a higher footprint potentially. So the feed industry should really make sure that it's not just about the feed footprint itself, it's how that feed is then going to be utilized in the farming system. They play an enormous role in the sustainability of animal protein, for sure,
And I know it's too early to ask, but how has been the response to Sustell at the forum?
Yeah, tremendous. I think what we've seen, and I think a lot of people will understand this, the demand for getting on top of your numbers from many quarters in the value chain and the associated stakeholders has only accelerated, I'd say, in the last 12 to 18 months, and it's getting even busier. We have lots of inquiries, lots of engagement from players throughout the value chain, and it's all linked into using the platform. So from a farming perspective, to use it as a good business diagnostic for one thing. I think the farming community recognising that typically, a big footprint is associated with an inefficient farming system. So they're strongly correlated. So making what we call the invisible visible, right? You then understand, okay, hang on, this is not as efficient as it could be. Okay, I better make some improvements. It also allows the farmer to, if it's has multiple farms, to really qualify what is a good farm with a low footprint and where best practice is happening, and then where to apply or how to apply that to the other farms in their group. So it also helps direct investment as well. And beyond that, beyond the farmer themselves, of course, you've got the downstream players. So the retailers, the CPG companies receiving animal protein, the food processors, who also, as I said, need to manage their commitments to reduction. They have, programs to adhere to, but also in certain geographies, like the rise of eco-labeling, really important. Again, this is really accelerating. Again, it comes down to having full footprint LCA analysis being done. And that is really now starting to open up opportunities in the consumer space at retail, right? Different price points, appealing to those consumers who want to make a conscious choice on more sustainable products, but also all the way through to the financing sector, where we also work there. The rise of sustainable financing, sustainability-linked loans, or sustainability-linked bonds, these sorts of things, and it's all pivoting around full life cycle analysis and adhering to the latest international methodologies in this respect. So there's a lot of buckets of value that become unlocked through understanding your footprint. So there's a tremendous amount of interest because of this.
We didn't talk in the conference about Sustell, but all the speakers this morning were referring to everything that you've just said, including the financial aspects of sustainability and what that means to the industry. But David, thank you very much for joining us today and explaining all that. Good luck with the rest of the event, and let's look forward to seeing Sustell out there and reporting on how it's progressing over time. But thank you for now.
Thanks, Roger. Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.